Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. My name is Caroline Colas, and I'm the Senior Director of Health and Wellness at the Marlene Meyerson JCC Manhattan. Today on our Positive Psychology Hour, a joint venture with the Whole Being Institute, we are going to be talking about perfectionism. Is it a Jewish virtue? With Hanna Perlberger. Running the gamut from having mapped the entire human genome to being able to shoot holes in space, we are used to the idea of being in control, except when we're not. These days, the loss of control, combined with the swiftness of change affecting every aspect of our lives, has stressed some of us to the hilt and exacerbated certain traits, such as perfectionism. And this program takes a unique look at Hanukkah as one of the birthplaces of perfectionism, and offers some strategies from the field of positive psychology, including optimism and mindset, in order to bring light to the dark side of this personality trait. Anybody out there suffer from perfectionism besides me? Yeah. So Hanna, a little bit about her, is a family law attorney of 20 years. She's an alum and former faculty member with the WBI Certificate in Positive Psychology program. And she was fascinated by the connections she saw between positive psychology and Judaism. But beyond those conceptual comparisons were tools Hanna thought she could use to help her connect more deeply and authentically to her faith and her observance. Judaism is great with telling you how to be, such as judging favorably or being happy with your lot, without necessarily providing the how-to so as to go about doing it. These connections started making the Torah come alive for Hanna in a new and personal way. She started a weekly blog called Positive Parsha, looking at the weekly Torah portion with a positive psychology twist. Those blogs evolved into her book, A Year of Sacred Moments, The Soul Seeker's Guide to Inspired Living, which leads the reader through a guided journey of the Torah. A natural alignment with the SIP program is coaching, and so Hanna became a certified coach in several coaching modalities. Synthesizing all of these things Hanna loves to do, she is launching Shalom Bayit project to help Jewish couples and singles learn how to build the peaceful home from the ground up. And in going beyond traditional matters of the heart, Hanna supports individuals in cultivating inner peace, resilience, and positivity during challenging times. And we certainly are in challenging times. Hanna, welcome to the call. So nice to have you with us. And we were kind of warming up we got on a little bit early and we were warming up, and I was fascinated to hear about your book. And to let you know that I had just graduated from the Whole Being Institute. And I know that you took the program during...
So high right now.
Yeah.
Right above the grounds.
Yeah, during a really challenging time. How are you affiliated with the Whole Being Institute, or how did you find SIP?
Well, actually, my husband found it for me. We were just going through a really tough time at home with some very severe health challenges and just a lot of stress. And my husband just... found the SIP program and thought it would be a really good fit for me, just really to help me just kind of up my game and give me some more resilience and some way to transition through the year that was facing us ahead. And I very quickly realized that this positive psychology was not just another intellectual exercise. It wasn't just because I have a love of learning. So it was not just, oh, I'm going just to acquire a new body of knowledge. This really transformed me as an observant Jew, because during that challenging time, I was not at all in touch with this aspect of gratitude, even though I know I'm supposed to be, right? I know what I'm supposed to do. I just couldn't get there. And one of the first things I did, like one of the first strategies, was just to keep that gratitude journal. I was skeptical. I thought, this isn't really going to change my life, but I'm very task oriented. If you tell me to do something, I will do it. And so I started keeping this journal, 5 things at night. What am I grateful for? And I have to say that it flipped my perspective, because instead of just feeling angry and depressed and stressed and feeling very dark and bleak, I started to see all the miracles. That's something that my husband survived something that kills most people, and that he was he wasn't impaired, he was intact, he just had to get better. And I thought, wow, like that's a miracle, right? Like how could I have not been grateful for that? And you know, I had a 12-year-old daughter at home, and people were picking her up, taking her to school, bringing us food for Shabbos, whatever we needed. I was surrounded by so much kindness, and I thought, how could I have not even have seen this? You know, that's, you know, the reality did not change, but my perception changed, and it went from dark to light. And I thought, this
Beautiful.
is really powerful stuff. You know, this is what I wanted to be before. I just didn't know how to do it. And I realized positive psychology, it fits with Judaism so beautifully. And it just helps you have the tools to really, to bring just a depth and an engagement to your practice, to bring a depth and engagement to, you know, to your relationship with God and the Torah. So to me, it's just a natural fit. I really can't even think of one without the other anymore. And so here we are.
Beautiful. And, you know, Megan McDonough, who's been on the calls with us during our graduation, right before, she was talking about Hebb's law, which is our research, which is what fires, right, together, wires together. And she said, but what makes things fire? And it was what we focus our attention on. And I was thinking about what you just said. All those things were happening around me, but I wasn't paying attention to them. And so, right. And so then after doing the gratitude journal, you were able to start paying attention to them. And then your gratitude or your awareness of the things that were happening that were also amazing, the good, right, that was happening around you. So positive psychology really is about being able to stand in the good when the reality is not so great, right? What's our capacity, increasing our capacity for the good, or as you said, the perspective, to change that perspective and focus on that as well. It doesn't mean to be like happyology, right?
No.
It's the bitter and the sweet, and then but being able to take advantage of the sweet and appreciate it.
But both were there. Both the illness and the blessings were there, but I could only see the dark side of it. The gratitude allowed me to see and come into a more full picture, a totality, where it wasn't just what's wrong, but and also what's right. So, right, it didn't,
beautiful,
right?
And I think
it just gives us more resilience and tools, even dealing with the illness. So it does transform that also, right?
Yeah, beautiful. And so, how does that relate? I was telling you earlier that perfection, I was once introduced by my dear friend Yaakov, that perfection is about being whole, right? Looking at the whole. And you just said that your vision expanded, right? So that you saw it didn't change your husband's illness, but it did change how you looked at it. Both were there, the blessings and the kindness that people were offering, as well as the challenge, right? So how did you come about your topic? I'm so interested in learning more about perfectionism, and I want you to kind of jump into it. Should we go into your screen?
All right. You know what? Can I minimize my screen? Am I able to do that? Yes. Okay. All right. Is it okay?
Yes, we can see it.
Sure. All right. So I just heard the funniest and best definition of creativity that I've ever heard. And it goes like this. Creativity is taking two unrelated things and smashing them together. I just love that, right? Smashing them together. All right. So tonight is the first night of Hanukkah. And I thought, let's smash together Hanukkah and perfectionism, because hopefully at the end of this presentation, you'll see that they're really smashable. You know, they really are kind of related. And it came about, I often give a talk for women on Rosh Chodesh, that's the new Jewish month. It's often celebrated by a gathering of women. This month is Kislev, and you can't do Kislev without doing Hanukkah. So what do we think of normally when we're thinking of Hanukkah? We're lighting our menorahs, we're eating latkes, we're playing dreidel now with members of our household with whom we've been in quarantine, right? We're thinking of the Hanukkah story as the conflict between the Jews and the Assyrian Greeks. So Antiochus was the Syrian king appointed by Greece to rule over the land of Israel, and he was tasked with bringing Jews into the light, right, to Hellenize them and to make them into good little idol-worshiping Jews. So as part of bringing the light, he actually enacted very severe decrees. He outlawed banning the observance of Rosh Chodesh that I just mentioned. He outlawed circumcision, banned Sabbath observance, and he completely desecrated the Holy Temple with idolatry. So the story of Hanukkah commemorates the turnaround of all that, right? The victory of the little band of Maccabees holding off the entire Syrian Greek army. It's like the story of, just ever see that movie 300, the 300 Spartans trying to hold off the whole Persian army at the Battle of Thermopylae? Well, it would be like that if the Spartans had won. I mean, we held off the entire Persian Greek army. It was crazy, right? An impossible battle. And then in the ruins, we find this one vial of pure oil that was sealed with the seal of the high priest. All right. And as we know, that one vial of oil, which is a 1-day supply, burned for 8 days, enough to make a new batch of pure oil. And we were able to rededicate the temple. And the word Hanukkah means dedication. Okay. Good so far? Great. So, all right. Now that was the story of Hanukkah that I knew growing up. What I didn't know was that Hanukkah is the story of a civil war between the Jews themselves. Okay, it was a civil war between the Jews that wanted to adhere to Jewish faith and practice, and the Jews that were buying into the Greek culture, the Hellenized Jews that were taking on the paganism. Okay, so that got my attention. And I was curious, what is it the Greeks were selling, right? What was so powerful and enticing about their message that it rose to the level of a civil war? So what's the Greek outlook on the world? So thank you, there's the first slide, because we know that to the Greeks, beauty and aesthetics were supreme, right? They're fixated with the human body. And to them, the perfect body was idealized as an athletic body, right? So this is Dionysus, this is Aphrodite, because the Greeks also made their gods in human form, perfect humans, right? So the Olympics, as we know, that originated in Greece, and the athletic competitions were done by naked athletes, but it was a form of worship. So Hellenized Jewish men competed in these competitions, but they had to undergo painful operations to reverse their circumcisions, because circumcision, we think it perfects the male body, but the Greeks thought the opposite. So they had to undergo that procedure in order to compete in those games. So for those of you who are familiar with VIA, values in action, and you're familiar with the idea of the signature character strengths, appreciation of beauty and excellence is one of the character strengths, but every strength can be overplayed. Every strength can become a weakness, and a virtue can turn into a vice. So we see the depictions of the perfect male physique, and the reason I wrote, "You look like a statue" on there is because I read that the greatest compliment you could give a man was to tell him that he resembled a sculpture, right? And I thought, well, isn't that kind of a modern day compliment when you tell somebody, oh, your abs are really, sculpted or chiseled or something like that? So if you go to the next slide, there's a bust that dates from the time of Hanukkah, which will actually the slide afterwards. But see this woman, Bella Hadid. She was called, science says that Bella Hadid is the most beautiful woman in the world, right? What made her so beautiful? She has the perfect face. She was found to be 94.35% accurate to a measurement of physical perfection that dates back to the mathematical equations devised by ancient Greeks to measure, beauty, right? And these measurements, by the way, I found out are used by plastic surgeons today. So next slide, please. So you see, like this bust that from the time of Hanukkah. Do you see? It's like the same face, right? We are still defining beauty according to these mathematical equations of the Greeks. So to focus on beauty alone is not the whole story. It's skin deep, unintended. It's not the whole picture. So where did this deification of beauty even come from? And to understand that, we have to look a little deeper and go and understand the Greek outlook on the universe. So these are 3 points, and this comes from a lecture from Rabbi Aaron Lichtenstein. He was born in Paris before the war, but he grew up in America. Very prominent rabbi of modern Jewish orthodoxy. He even has a PhD in English literature from Harvard, and he gave a Hanukkah lecture, and I just distilled these 3 points, and this is how he characterized the Greeks. Okay? 1, that which is revealed and perceptible is all there is. So that means that there is nothing in the universe that was beyond comprehension, right? The universe contains no mystery, reflects no greater power. 2, all is in man's grasp to understand. So the Greeks believed that existence in its totality is comprehensible and conquerable, right? We can know it and we can control it. We can conquer this, right? And the task of mastering the world was achievable by whom? Man, the perfect man. Okay, so the perfect man can master all of creation. On the 3rd point, creation contains law and order, harmony and beauty, which give man the ability to conquer and dominate the universe with his intellect, right? That appreciation of beauty and excellence, intellect. So the Greeks placed intellect and beauty at the center of their thought so they could grasp, capture, and control the world. So the conflict is really who's in control, right? Is man in control or is God in control? So to paraphrase what the Greeks were selling, their brands, it was a very powerful message that perfection is the ideal and it's not impossible. Perfect is possible, but it's in man's reach and control. So conversely, it's your fault and it's your failure if you don't achieve it. Now that's a really big belief, but it's not a Jewish one. Okay, so, we've gone through, the Roman exile and the Babylonian exile, but we also have spiritual exiles. And our sages say that we are still at present, still in the spiritual exile of Greece. And they describe that exile as one of darkness. So I would say that the conflict is not just an ancient conflict, it's very much alive today. And I would say one of the ways it's very much alive is in the guise of modern day perfectionism. So perfectionism is a struggle that I've had all my life, obviously before I even knew what perfectionism was or that it was bad for my health. And I have noticed, as I said in that little blurb, that these days I'm just seeing a real uptick in these perfectionist tendencies that I have, right? Because it's just too much change, way too fast, thinking wait, Thanksgiving can kill me now? Really? It's so much uncertainty that I feel helpless and out of control. And when I feel helpless and out of control, that tends me to push me into this overcompensation and need for perfection and to reestablish my control. So I go into overdrive, and it's not going well. And it's not going well for a lot of people. So according to a World Health Organization study, this was done in 2018, a record number of young people worldwide are suffering from depression and anxiety. And the root cause is believed to be this internalizing of a contemporary myth that things, including themselves, should be perfect. I just want to repeat that. This is the WHO study saying that the root cause of worldwide perfectionism in young people is the internalizing of a contemporary myth that things, including themselves, should be perfect. But as we now know, this myth is not contemporary, right? It goes back at least 2,200 years. So we've been drinking this Kool-Aid for a long time, and science is just starting to pay attention. Because when I was growing up, before all this positive psychology and transformational stuff, I always thought perfectionism had a good rap, right? Perfectionism was an ideal to strive for. So when I was in college, I actually was a music major. I played viola. And I can remember so many evenings being in the basement of the music building, these little airless, fluorescent light little, cubicles. And what was the sign on the wall? Practice makes perfect, right? And so in my academic world, in my professional world growing up, to be perfect or kill yourself trying was really the badge of honor. So what is perfectionism? And so here we have the slide, and this exemplifies what I think is just a pretty standard description of perfectionism. And I pulled this from an article called Why Perfectionism is So Damaging, What to Do About It by Ray Williams. So he says, perfectionism is a personality trait characterized by a person's striving for flawlessness and setting high performance standard, accompanied by critical self-evaluations and concerns regarding others' evaluations. Okay, now there was a time when I would have read that and thought, okay, is that really such a bad thing? I don't know, striving for flawlessness and setting high performance standards. I mean, if I didn't have that, like, who would I be? If I didn't have that, what would I be? Would I be a slacker? Would I be mediocre? Would it be okay with mediocrity? So maybe it's not such a bad thing. And yes, I see the piece of it that's accompanied by critical self-evaluation and concerned about what other people think of me, but doesn't it just mean that I really care, a lot what people think, like, and that things matter? So I look at this and I don't get why this is such a terrible thing, or at least the old me would have thought that, right? And then even recognizing that, yes, it's painful at times to have this going on, I'm willing to pay the price, right? No pain, no gain. So then in 2010, Brene Brown burst on the scene with her famous TED Talk on the power of vulnerability. And that talk became a viral hit. So it struck a chord with me and millions of people because she blew the lid off on an epidemic of shame. And she was talking about vulnerability, courage, authenticity, and that to live a wholehearted life of engagement, we need to embrace vulnerability and imperfection. And she showed us that, yes, you can still strive for excellence, but not crossing the line into perfectionism. So this is a picture of her doing her TED Talk, right? And the quote there is from her book, The Gifts of Imperfection. So perfection is not the same thing as striving to be your best. And perfectionism is not the same thing as healthy achievement and growth, right? And so for the first time I saw, okay, so there's this line. So below the line, that's a strength, right? It's a good thing to strive to be your best. But if you cross that line, now you're veering into the danger zone. I'm thinking like danger, Will Robbins, danger, right? So if you're my age, you'll get that reference. And by the way, I want to throw this thing out that Judaism really encapsulates this idea as well, because what does Judaism tell us? What is our job? It's our job to do our part. It's our job to do our best. That phrase, do our hishtadlus. But the outcome is not in our hands, right? So you're crossing the line when you are trying desperately to control outcomes. Like, we're not in control, and we never were. So strangely, after Brene, with all this authenticity and stuff, I morphed into kind of like a weird hybrid of like, I became like a vulnerable, authentic perfectionist, right? So I outed myself as having imposter syndrome. I admitted I can't sleep for 2 days before I give a talk. I was terrified of not being perfect. I felt bad about myself most of the time, but I'm totally fine if you know this about me, right? So, and I still thought, maybe being a perfectionist is still better than not, because if I get great results, well, that's the price I'm willing to pay. And by the way, that very belief, a price I'm willing to pay for greatness, that itself is one of the hallmark traits of being a perfectionist. And so I finally came to understand that pain doesn't create greatness. As a matter of fact, the perfectionism stifles greatness. So now you know my story of becoming a SIP student. So I was in SIP 2, like SIP was really just out of the gate. And we were learning at the feet of, Tal Ben Shahar, right? The great Tal Ben Shahar. But what makes Tal so great, so dear, really so unique, especially in the academic world, is his vulnerability and his humility. And so like Brene, he shares his struggles very openly with perfectionism in his journey. So, we tend to think of Tal just like in connection with happiness, like the happiness guru of Harvard, but he also deals with perfectionism. And this, I just include this slide because I just want to plug this book. It's a great book. And in that book, he describes, was of course, like a lifelong goal of his to get into Harvard. He finally gets into Harvard, fulfills his dream. And what happens? He's miserable. Why is he miserable? Because he's terrified. He feels like the sword of Damocles. I know the Greek is constantly over his head. Like, what if he missed a crucial word of a lecture? What if he was caught off guard and couldn't answer a question? Right? What if he couldn't proofread a paper for the third time before he submitted it? And that fear, because he thought any misstep could lead to an imperfect performance, and that would lead to failure. And that would lead to the very end of his becoming the kind of person he wanted to be and the life he envisioned, right? And then what happened? His worst nightmare came true, and he didn't get an A, right? Now, as he explains, no one likes to fail. Failure doesn't feel good. It's normal to want to avoid failure if you can. But Tal explains there's a difference between a normal aversion to fear and an intense fear of failure, right? So normal aversion to failure, that's what motivates us to take precautions and work hard. Maybe that's part of the healthy striving, right? The normal fear of failure. But once we get into that intense fear of failure, that's what handicaps us. Because when we're so afraid of failure, we won't take the risks we need to take that are necessary for growth. And so he wrote, those who intensely, failure is an inescapable and critically important part of life. Those who intensely fear to fail wind up falling short of their potential, right? We either learn to fail or we fail to learn. And so the reason I have it in italicized, that last line, we either learn to fail or we fail to learn, because number one, that's the way Tal wrote it in his book. But number two, there are certain mantras that we had in SIP, certain Taoisms, right? And this was one of them. We would all recite it in unison because we really took this to heart. And so I saw that perfectionism, it's really not this rocket fuel for productivity that I thought it was. Perfectionism is actually counterproductive. It's in the way. And as someone with a signature strength of creativity, which I have, this is actually really crippling. And besides that, it just doesn't feel good. And so I was finally ready to dig into my perfectionism. But I had a narrow vision for how this was showing up for me, because I'm only thinking this in terms of my work product, my learning, and I was just focusing very much just in the intellectual realm. So some of you may be familiar with the term PERMA. It's an acronym coined by Marty Seligman that identifies the 5 pillars of well-being, which are positive emotions, engagement, positive relationships, meaning, and achievement. So this slide is the SPIRE model, and I understand that a lot of you are familiar with this, either directly from being involved with SIP or through these lectures, that this has come up a lot. And so this is the model that I like to work with. And so Tal, along with Megan Madonna and Maria Serwa at the Whole Being Institute, created the SPIRE model, which is a little bit more holistic view, I think, than PERMA, because it incorporates the S for spiritual and the P for the physical, the mind-body relationship. And so they create really this whole person approach to well-being and happiness. So I don't know if you can read the letters. So S is for spiritual, P for physical, I is intellectual, R relational, and E is emotional. And so on the basis of this, when I thought about my own perfectionism, I realized, just like all these spheres interlapped and they connect, and what happens in one sphere really affects all the other spheres, because we're not compartmentalized. We are whole beings, right? So it goes to say that if you are experiencing perfectionism in one of these spheres, more likely than not, you're really affecting them. You're experiencing it in all the spheres. The perfectionism is really affecting you really across your life domains. And so I wanted to take a look at that, of how that was showing up. So going just back to this Ray Williams article, he creates a list of perfectionist traits. And I'm going to go through that. And I was very surprised to see some of the traits that come under this rubric of perfectionism. Some of them really just took me by surprise. And I'm curious, I'm going to actually go through each one of them. But please feel free to post in the chat box, do any of these resonate for you? Like, do you see this going on for you? And I'm also curious, do you see it, like, which sphere of your life, which sphere of Spire do you see this being impacted? And if you want to post in the chat when I'm done with this list, I'll turn my gaze over to the chat box and read some of your responses. Okay, so the first one is, what do perfectionists believe? They believe I must be perfect, or I will be rejected, not approved of, or liked, right? I think this is actually like what I see in coaching. I think this is really like the main one that people really suffer with. So perfectionists make a link between performance and how people will feel about them. So Brene Brown says that perfectionism is the belief that if we live perfect, we look perfect, and we act perfect, we can minimize or avoid the pain of blame, judgment, and shame. So this trait usually originates in childhood, where you needed to be perfect for approval, for love, for belonging, and as a dependent child, for safety, because your survival really depended on it. And this is how the persona of people pleasers, the good child, the caretaker, the savior, etc. This is the birthplace of that, because it's a survival mechanism and it's brilliant when you're a kid, but then it's dysfunctional and constraining as an adult. So 2, if they make a mistake, it's the end of the world, right? So here they catastrophize and exaggerate the importance and impact of the mistakes they might or actually do make. And they may think they won't even survive it if they make these mistakes. So think of Tal as a student, thinking that one little misstep, one typo on a paper, one, not having the ready response at a lecture or something, or not getting an A, like one little misstep, and the whole trajectory of his life, as he knows it, like, will be destroyed, right? That exaggerated catastrophical thinking. It's a hallmark of perfectionism. It's what they do. They often procrastinate, okay? This is what I call having all your ducks in a row. And that's just impossible, right? So what happens is the perfectionist delays taking action and waits for the ideal conditions or circumstances, or they overplan, like analysis paralysis. It's so funny, like right before I was doing this lecture, like checking my last text, and I'm renovating the kitchen, and it's really been weeks I haven't been able to pick. Do I want brown cabinets or do I want white cabinets? And I decided to check these. We're doing brown and white cabinets, right? I've been like analyzing this to death, like the perfect kitchen, right? So like Tal says, perfectionists, we become risk adverse, right? We're so afraid if there's a risk of failure, we want to avoid making the decision. So 4, there was only one perfect way to do or accomplish things, and everything else is wrong. Everything else is substandard or a failure. So this is where you believe there's only one measure of success. And I can tell you, as a divorce lawyer, this is probably the biggest pitfall of decision making, because I call this my way or the highway. And so they have to get everything they want in all aspects, or it's no deal. Okay, so what's lacking is perspective. They don't have a focus of the bigger picture. They only see what they don't get rather than what they do get, right? The focus is only on what's not working, which is the opposite of positive psychology, is what's going right. So number 5, they're always eager to please, or they've always been eager to please. And this is very much related to number 1, but here the emphasis is on a need to impress, like not be perfect, but just need to impress. Okay, so this trait is about making comparisons to people that they think are perfect or who have perfect lives. And that's always going to hurt, because here is evidence that perfect is possible, right? For other people. Perfect is possible for other people. Look at her, look at him, look at their family, look at their life, look at their house, right? So what's wrong with me? And that's that Greek thing. And it just drives these irrational ideals and expectations, because we're focused on what will make me look good in the eyes of others. And that just leads to a lifetime of frustration and self-doubt. And I remember in SIP, Megan Medina saying, hell is social comparison, right? It's true, hell is social comparison. So number 6, they're highly critical of others. So this is just a defense mechanism. And what they're rejecting are the aspects of themselves that they can't accept or they can't see, like the shadow self that they disown. And what they just project that on other people because they cannot cope with the feelings that are coming up for them. So they're rejecting what they can't accept in themselves. And for perfectionists, there's a lot to reject. So if anybody's interested in this, I really recommend just Googling shadow work, and it's fascinating stuff. So number 7, they go big or go home. So here, perfectionists, they just struggle with black and white thinking, right? You're a success one minute and you're a failure the next. And what makes you a success or a failure? It's the latest accomplishment or failure, right? And you're just tagging, you're whipsawed between these two states, and you can wind up doing things in the extreme. Number 8, they have a hard time opening up to other people. So Brene says that perfectionism is a 20-ton shield that we lug around thinking that it'll protect us, when in fact, it's the very thing that's preventing us from taking flight, right? So here the idea is we want to self-protect. So we want to like armor up, shield up, right? But the sad irony is that it doesn't protect us. It's only hurting us, right? We have to understand it's not a protection. It's actually hurting us. It's keeping us from connecting to other people. Number 9, they get really defensive when criticized. So perfectionism is overall, perfectionism is a defense mechanism against the pain of being wrong or feeling like a failure. So to preserve a fragile self-image in the way they appear to others, a perfectionist will try to take control by defending themselves against any threat, even when no defense is needed. And I find that last point interesting because when we feel threatened, when we're feeling triggered, our perceptions get very distorted and we can feel like we're under attack even when we're not. So we jump to the defense even when, no defense was really needed in that moment. And the last one, 10, they're never quite there yet. Because perfection is an impossible pursuit, perfectionists tend to have the perpetual feeling that they're not quite there yet. I want to spend just a little time in this last trait because number 1, this was a big surprise to me. This was perfectionism. This actually has the most profound impact on me that I have this going on because this really impacts my sphere of spirituality. Because this relentless feeling that I have is like, what is my purpose? What is my mission? What am I supposed to be doing with this one precious wildlife? Thank you, Mary Oliver, right? So when I was in my 50s, I was like, really cool, like bring it. I was reading Joan Borisenko and Marty Seligman, and like, I'm just reading about this amazing thing called being middle-aged because they made it seem so glamorous. And I was convinced there's nothing more powerful than a woman in her 50s. It's my time to actualize myself from the inside out, right? And then I turned 60 and I went into a big crisis. Like, wait, what? And it's so funny Carolyn, when you're just reading my bio, I'm sure I wrote it, but you said I had been a family lawyer for 20 years. I'm like, wait a minute, I've been a family lawyer for 30 years. Like, seriously, where did that decade go? And then, so I don't think I had that big moment. Like, when was the big reveal? Did I miss my window? Is it over? And now the clock's running out. I'm like turning 62, and like I don't know where there is. Like, is there a sign like welcome to there? You have arrived. You are there. Like, how do you know? And so I read an interview with Katharine Hepburn. She was in her 90s, maybe 94, 90s, whatever, midnight, when she said that she, in her opinion, she had never done anything noteworthy or important in her whole life. Okay? Nothing. This is Katharine Hepburn. She was serious. So understanding this chasing your existential tail is part of perfectionism. That was like a big wow for me. So what is the heart of this last trait? It's really, the heart of it, maybe the heart of all of it is really, it's the hustle for worthiness. But it's a bad hustle, right? So the answer is not to double down. It's not to try harder, right? Because there is no there. So the answer, at least for me, is maybe I should just give up the hustle, right? Stop chasing worthiness. Stop thinking like a Greek and get in alignment with Jewish values. Because perfectionism for sure is not a Jewish value. It's the opposite. Turns out, what's a Jewish value? It's imperfection. And that's why I love positive psychology and Judaism, because as you'll see, we're singing the same song. So Rabbi Simcha Bunim Barnard, I hope I'm saying that name correctly, he was a Hasidic Polish rabbi in the 1700s. And he said, everyone must have two pockets, right? They have to have a note in each pocket so he can reach into either one depending on the need. So he said, when you're feeling lowly and depressed, discouraged or disconsolate, you reach into the right pocket and there you're going to find the words, for my sake, the world was created. But when you're feeling high and mighty, right? Once you reach into your other pocket and find the words, I am but dust and ashes, right? For my sake, the world was created and I am but dust and ashes. So you see, for my sake, the world was created. The Greeks weren't wrong about man being the center of creation, because Judaism also places man at the center of creation. But at the same time, I am but dust and ashes, right? At the same time, we are nothing in the presence of God. We are nothing before a hidden and revealed being. I mean, just don't take yourself so darn seriously. Right? So the Greeks got it only half right. They don't, because it's a one pocket religion, but we need both pockets. But it's not an either or, okay? We need to understand that both of these pockets are true at the same time. So to the Greeks, beauty is holy, but in Judaism, it's holiness. That's beautiful. So holiness embraces imperfection, needs, deficiencies, and brokenness, because that's how we created. That's the difference between creating God's and man's image versus being created by God. And let me explain. So next slide. So I was saying my morning blessings, and sometimes like I say them so quickly and that I'm not even connected to the words. And sometimes I just go back to the English so I can just really hone on like, what am I really saying here? And so I was saying this particular blessing, blessed are you, Hashem, our God, King of the universe, who has provided my every need. And I thought, all these years I've been putting a word in that blessing that's not there. In my mind, I always thought it was saying, who has provided for my every need, right? Inserting for my every need. And that understanding, at least to me, is that, okay, God's providing for my needs, right? So if I didn't have something that I thought I needed, well, obviously I don't really need it. That's why I don't have it. So God provides for my needs. And if I don't have it, it's because I don't need it. That's kind of how I thought about it. And I thought, no, you're misreading this. God provides my needs. And then I thought, if I look at the word that's translated into provide, the Hebrew word is asa. Asa really means to build, to create, to do, right? Oseh hashalom, to make peace. And what I'm really saying is that God creates my needs. God creates every need that I have. He creates the needs. He creates me, a needy being with deficiencies, right? Needy in the best sense of the word. And it's so fantastic to be needy, because then I need God in my life, right? I need all of you, or otherwise I'm just talking to an empty cyber room. I need relationships. I need love. I need joy. I need positive emotions. I need connection, and I'm short, so I need a tall person to get my favorite brand of coffee from the top shelf of the supermarket where I used to shop before Instacart. And I used to go to the supermarket, right? But I need people. And if I didn't need anything, if I were perfect and self-sufficient in all ways, what a lonely and meaningless existence that would be. So I can't be perfect, because God creates me to need. And that's the basis of connection. And the story of man is the story of relationship, right? It is not good for man to be alone. So we are wired for connection, and we need it. And so the idea is not to double down, not to try having no deficiencies, not to stop being needy, but to embrace it. Because this is how our Creator created us. And our Creator wants us to remember that each and every morning. Like, it's the plan. It's okay. You don't have to overthink it, right? We're not in control. never were. So Brene Brown entitled her book, The Gifts of Imperfection. But I was thinking, well, who's the giver, right? So I just I throw this out to you. What could shift for you if you considered imperfection as a gift from God, right? Imperfection is a gift from God and therefore something holy. So when we embrace brokenness, we can heal it because we even need our challenges and we even need our pain. We even need the things that can break us. And this is probably my favorite saying of all. You know, this beautiful paradox. The Kutzker Rebbe, a Hasidic rabbi in the 18th century, and he said, there's nothing more whole than a broken heart, right? Nothing more whole than a broken heart. So next slide, please. So I saw this beautiful quote by Erica Brown. Erica, I don't know who you are. I give you my gratitude for writing this beautiful little quote, and I wanted to share it with you today. So she says, when we acknowledge that we are broken, we enter a universe where we are not measured by perfection, but by our willingness to repair ourselves and the world. We stop judging others only when we can recognize our own inadequacies, right? Our own inadequacies. And then we come right back full circle. We come back to Brene Brown, where she says, imperfections are not inadequacies. They're reminders that we're in all this together, right? This is our commonality. This is our humanity. This is what connects us. So you're probably familiar with that famous quote by Marianne Williamson, when she says, you know, when we give ourselves permission to shine, we give other people permission to shine also. So I'm thinking, well, then the reverse must be true, right? When we can give ourselves permission to drop that 20-ton shield, right? Give ourselves permission to be imperfect, to be vulnerable, to be real, to be human, then we're giving other people a huge gift. We're saying to them, hey, you don't have to pretend either, right? So here we are, back to the beginning with Tal Ben Shahar. Permission to be human. We need to give ourselves permission to be human. It is a gift for us to give ourselves and to give others, right? But to be human in the fullest sense of the human experience, right? Not just the happy stuff, but the full enchilada, the great, you know, the full catastrophe. So experiences in life, listen, you know, and when we talk the gifts of imperfection and the things that break us, there are just many experiences in life that will try to break us or that will break us, that will break our hearts open, whether it's illness, right? Loneliness, death of somebody we love, rejection, insecurity, and loss. But getting back to the idea of a broken heart, these experiences make us more whole as human beings, right? They expand our range of consciousness and compassion. They enlarge our capacity for inclusion. They make us stronger, and they help us reach out to others with greater empathy and concern. And so this slide, know this is truth, that you're good enough. Now I know that for some of you, just seeing the words of the slide can be hard to believe. And if that's the case, I want you to know that that voice inside your head is not the voice of heaven. It's the hell of Greece. You are good enough. And let this be the place in which you live and bring this healing message to others also. They are good enough too, right? Now, I know this talk is not going to instantly change anyone who struggles with perfectionism. It's a journey, but it's exciting because it's really the journey of self-awareness. And so I really encourage you to read the works of Brene Brown and Tal Ben Shahar. And if you have not yet gotten involved with the Whole Being Institute, you're in for one wild, sweet ride, right? SIP, they open up worlds. For me, they changed the trajectory of my life. Next slide, please. So what you perceive changes yourself, and what you do changes the world. And that is really the essence of positive psychology. It's about helping you get awareness that you have choices. You know, remember free will? We have free will. We can change our thoughts and behaviors. We can change our brains. We can recreate ourselves. And we have these countless threshold moments all the time. These are the moments of choice, right? Will we shrink or will we expand? So the Talmud says, each blade of grass has its own angel. This just affects me. Each blade of grass has its own angel whispering to it, like, grow, grow. Like, don't you think that we have one too? Right? Okay. So to end, perfectionism, it's just so beautiful, right? A blade of grass has an angel. Don't you think a human does? Okay. So to end, perfectionism is the darkness that lives in your head, but embracing imperfection lives in the light. You change yourself and you change the world. So it's about time that we end this dark exile in Greece, right? Be the light bearer that you were created to be. Can you make the world perfect? Probably not, but it will be good enough, and that's holy. And so I wish you much joy, light, and peace. Happy Hanukkah and Chag Sameach.
Mm. Wow. Beautiful. Beautiful, Hanna. And this is Hannah's book. And I know that some of us there was a request to go back and look at the Erica Brown quote.
Oh, and you know what I didn't do? I'm so sorry. I didn't look at the chat or the comments if anybody posted.
Oh, I was doing that, not to worry.
Okay.
So we'll do that. And I just want to reassure everyone that
Yes.
you can listen to this talk again. We will send it out, and we will also send out the slide deck so that people can have that. And because there's been a request for that, Hanna. It's just such a beautiful presentation. I'm deeply moved by your sharing.
Thank you. And so also, if you get the slides, I've got, I think, at least like 70 articles published on Chabad.org or JewishWoman.org. And I've included just my email if you want to be on a mailing list, or you just want to, talk about this stuff. Like if this turns you on, you want to talk about it, share your experience, or just, have a conversation. Just send me an email.
Wow. Lois said, this is the best lunch and learn ever. Ellen said, so beautiful, not reaching for something that doesn't exist is such a gift. Yeah. Please put in the chat any questions or comments you have. This is the first gift of Hanukkah. Thank you. And we were talking about how we need the darkness to see the light, right? You were talking about the lights on your, you said your balcony or whatever, that you can't even see them during the daytime, Hanna, and then at night?
Practice to see the light.
Yeah, we do that. Where is Hannah's book sold? Joy wants to know.
Amazon.
Amazon, there we go.
Yeah, just Google me, title of the book, or if you can't remember it, just Google me on Amazon, or send me an email. Happy to send you the link.
Yeah, and I put in there the Whole Being Institute Certificate in Positive Psychology. If people are interested in that, diving deeper into the 9-month certificate program from our partners at Whole Being Institute. And Hannah, I don't know if I told you this, but they also have created a virtual giving circle with JCC, in that if someone does sign up from the program, do use the code, because they will then make a donation back to the JCC as part of that person's tuition. So it's just so amazingly generous that they're doing that. And it's been life-changing for me to meet Phoebe, of course, and then Megan McDonough, who just jumped in right away at the start of the pandemic, the moment I met her, and said, how can we help? And I said that, as a community, we don't know how to stay connected on the virtual space. And we did that in late March, every single day, Monday through Friday. And then it wound up to 2 weeks, just to stay connected. And because I felt like you did, that these tools on resilience could be life-saving. And
I just want to mention what my book does is it takes every Torah portion. There's 54 of them. So there's 54 chapters. So there's 54, kind of like, explorations of the Torah portion through the lens of positive psychology. But as a coach, I include 3 coaching questions. So it's a very interactive kind of guided journey for a reader. And the nice thing about it, I've seen people have done book clubs around it, but it's a very nice way. Like if people want to have chavrutas, if they want to have like learning partners, like to go through this and then discuss like their answers to the questions. It's just like, it would be like a way to connect, like through positive psychology, through Torah, making more connections. And it's just a great way to use the book.
Beautiful.
It's not just reading. It's like it's very interactive and engaging, and it's a workbook. So
Yes. And Sophia?
it's just not what I think about the part. It's just like, what do you think about it, right?
Exactly. She says, I'm a longtime student of Hanna. She is brilliant and authentic. Thank you, Hanna, for your profound inspiration. From, how do I say her name? Sofya? Sofa?
Oh, Sophia.
Sophia. Oh, beautiful. And I also put in the chat that we have another Hanukkah celebration coming up with our partner, Share It, on Monday night. We're going to be doing Broadway's Best for Breast Cancer. And we'll have Mandy singing, and we will have Adam also singing. And we're going to be doing some programs, some makeup tips for people that are living with cancer, or anyone can come. I know a lot of you on this call have come there. Mandy can sing, and it's so amazing. Such a brilliant celebration. Any thoughts that you have? I was just struck by, if we go back to the list, you know, of identifying what you said, which one of those are you, and how do they affect your life? I was like, I think I'm all of those. Did anybody else have that feeling? If you can just raise your hand, I'll put in gallery. I want to see if anybody else related to any of those things, or more than one. Yeah. No, I'm seeing lots of hands up in the air. So you're not alone there, Hanna, and I'm not alone. And Vance, you said you sort of did as well. Is that common? We have any idea the percentages of how many people do suffer from perfectionism in America or around worldwide? Do you know, Hanna?
I don't. Well, again, according to that study, it's like it's systemic. It's really systemic. And it's, you know, I think Brene Brown, she just changed the landscape, because I was one of those, you know, happy perfectionists. You know what I mean? I thought, like, this was so bad about this, you know. So she just started a whole new conversation, and of course, positive psychology has just broken open this whole, you know, new way of looking at it, and realize that this is not adaptive, it's maladaptive, right? It's taking that, again, like just like the Greeks did with you know, appreciation of beauty and excellence, you cross the line, and then it's something else, right? So perfectionism is just crossing the line into something else, and just that, you know, it took me a while to be willing to even look at it.
You have to have bravery, don't you?
You have to stop defending your ego and saying, maybe this isn't really working. You know, like, how's it going for you, really? You know, price to pay for greatness. Yeah, how great, you know? I don't know. In the pandemic, I didn't learn a new language or learn opera or take on, you know, Persian cuisine. I basically binge watched Netflix and gained 15 pounds. So, like, you know, like, it hasn't been so great. Right.
Yeah, and yet you're here today, and you gave one of the most brilliant talks we've had.
Thank you.
So thank you.
And I just really want to, you know, thank Phoebe. She just, you know, she's just been such a super supporter, and she was so helpful in pulling this talk together. And, you know.
Yeah. Well, like the light, like the candles in Hanukkah and the gifts, I do believe that when we are touched by another's words, we are changed. And I certainly am changed by having met you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Everyone, happy Hanukkah. Thank you, Lois. Lois has got some thumbs up there. This was really excellent. Thank you so much. Absolutely one of the most brilliant talks. So many thanks. Always touched by the lessons and tools I come away with. Always touched by your insights and loving kindness. Thank you, Caroline and Hanna. Hanna, I teach at a university, and my department is doing a lot of work in anti-racist training. One of the central tenets is that perfectionism is a white supremacist trait and the tool of oppression. I've struggled with that idea, but your talk has helped me place it in the context of Hellenism. Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's a Greek thing. It's not.
It's a Greek thing.
Get the grease out of your head. You're just. It's a virus. You're just. It's grease. Like, ugh.
I think
not a Jewish virtue. Not a Jewish value.
Everybody say aloud. Get the grease out of your head. All right. Take care, everyone. Thank you so much, Hanna.
Thank you, Hanna. Thank you.
Bye now.